Greetings, this is Mr. Nobody with part 4 of my January 6th series. We were just beginning to get to the details of the election fraud, and now specifically within the counting process. This is part of a long-term goal that is still being fought. In short, I'd be surprised if this video stays up for very long, at least in one place. Let us hope that maybe somewhere else will keep it longer. Maybe I'll just get it as many places as possible, and maybe some place will keep it up there for a good long time. Because this is the stuff they're really afraid of. This is the stuff they will do anything to people. And what is that? What does it pertain to? The ability to manipulate the counting process so as to get your guy to win. Or to keep somebody from winning. They're really out to get somebody. Like I said, the short-term goal was just to get Biden in. Why? They wanted him in particular? No, nobody wanted Biden. I mean, you go nationwide. I'm trying to find people who actually specifically said, yeah, I want Biden. They couldn't even find support for him in the Democratic primaries. Here are the lead ones. Here's Elizabeth Warren way up here, and here's Sanders, even up here. Buttigieg, have put in a respectable showing and so forth. And way down in the noise, Biden's hat's in the ring, but he's down in the noise. How he somehow emerged as the front runner by the end of the Democrat primary process is just not clear to anyone, not even the Democrats who, found themselves stuck with having to vote for that instead of, well, here was the thing. Nobody can give any positive reason to vote for Biden, and nobody had a reason. Well, maybe 1,000 to immediate family members and other cronies who stood to gain something personally. Yeah, I'll vote for Biden, and I'll make you secretary of this or that, or I'll appoint you to this or that, or ambassador to such and such. Okay, so there may be 1,000 or 2,000 people like that nationwide who would have actual reasons that they would actually positively want Biden in there, independent of who he's running against. As for the rest, it wasn't that everybody else voting Biden wanted Biden. It was just they'd been told not to like Trump, so they wanted to get rid of Trump. That was it. I mean, we saw Biden. Trump's out there campaigning. What was Biden doing? Sitting in his basement the whole time. No visibility, no contact, no pressing the flesh, as they used to say, when you would shake hands and hold babies and all those other things politicians do, trying to gain the public's support and sympathy. None of that. Biden sits there cowering in his basement. I'd like to say in his parents' basement, but they're no longer with us. God rest their souls, but they're unhappy souls seeing what's become of their offspring. I'd be terribly disappointed too. Yeah, so that was just incidental. Getting Biden in there wasn't about Biden at all. It was about getting Trump out. Once they achieved that goal at the election, it doesn't matter. Hunter Biden laptop doesn't have to be hidden anymore. It comes out, and eventually we all figure out, yep, not only is it real, the characters who said it wasn't, didn't mean anything, are not to be believed for very solid reasons, etc., etc. Look at the stuff that's on here. Here's this other testimony from other people like Bob Alinsky and so forth. All that stuff can come out now. Doesn't matter. All they really needed to do was to destroy Trump, or at least get him out of the White House. That should be the end. Well, now we're starting to see maybe it won't be the end, which means they're having to come up with something else, and that's what scares me. I don't know. So, I've already mentioned we now get down to the actual stuff that was happening. the stuff they don't want people talking about. Biden had laptop was short term. Getting Biden in was very short term because all they really wanted was to get Trump out. The medium term. But there's a long term goal, and that's still with us. That still gets suppressed. So, in the previous installment, I listed a couple items. How poll watchers were kept from being able to see what was going on by either being far away or just not allowed to see anything at all. To stand outside the building while it goes on, And then the next one was that they had found some 10,000 dead people who had voted in Michigan. Well, let's go on. Another item here, that whole list. Okay, these are things that happened that were observed by various poll watchers, poll workers, reporters, and other workers and other people involved who had seen things pertaining to the election and how it was being thrown. Well, all's fair in love, war, and elections, obviously, and a successful cheat is as good as a legitimate win. And that's obviously the program, and that probably summarizes in one sentence the biggest thing they want to keep secret right there. A successful cheat is just as good as a legitimate win. So, item number 3 on this list. Absentee ballots in Wisconsin require witness information, including address. You can have ballots for these things, but somebody has to be signed. Yeah, this person's a shut-in. This person's on an overseas, as an army military person, but they belong in this place here where they live and they come back home, and so on. Absentee ballots are one and all individually requested. But, and oh, by the way, if incomplete, if the attempt to ask for it is incomplete, no ballot is provided. But workers called in addresses in red ink. Many examples were detected. So there was a lot of stuff being done with the absentee ballots. They were given to people who didn't ask for them. They were being filled in by people who, you were just filling them in. Okay, number 4. In Michigan, the workers were being told to ignore signature mismatches and also to backdate late ballots. So, election day is over. It's 8 p.m. election day or whatever the time is that the state legislators determine this is the cutoff moment for election in our state. But there were 2 things going on there. One, things could come after that. Well, they actually had post offices backdating things. You mail a letter at the post office. Is this just a regular letter or is this a ballot? Oh, this is a ballot. And you give it to somebody who's keep the postage meter set for the previous day because it came in the day after, because somebody went to mail it the day after. Or even, So there was that. And then there was also that the signature mismatches. Now, I've seen the point brought up. Signature mismatches are, to some degree, a kind of subjective thing. I look at all the signatures I've ever written on checks or forms or whatever, and I'd have to wonder if a person could be certain that somebody who had this signature of mine would be able to say with much reliability whether or not this is also my signature or forgery, or just plain old somebody else with a handwriting style that approximates mine enough that they could just write it down and then, and they'd say, looks close enough to me, or not, or even it was mine, but, there's an interesting line in Hopscotch, the movie, where Walter Matthau's character is saying, or somebody's saying of him, his checks keep bouncing because his signature changes so much. I look at my own, it could be like that. I don't know. It's kind of an art. It's kind of subjective. But at least you should look, and it should be kind of obvious. It should be kind of obvious whether the signature could be from the same person versus these are totally different. So, but they were just told to flat out ignore. There's no looking at this at all. In Michigan. Now, another one. Item number 5. Mail-in ballots accepted from people who were not registered to vote. They were accepted in Detroit. Voter registrations added on the fly to register unregistered voters gave them all birth dates of January 1, 1900. You have a lot of people with a birth date of 1900 on the rolls in Detroit. We know they weren't born then. Or maybe one or two incredibly old people. They'd be 120 years old. I was 121 years old. How many people are like that in the entire world? They could be comfortably seated at my dinner table with room to spare. And as for everybody else, that's not their real birthday, but that's what they got. Okay. Another item number 6. Tens of thousands of unsealed, unsecured ballots, all for Democrat, by the way, arrived in open-top boxes from vehicles with out-of-state license plates. That'll be another item that kind of ties in with this one. Okay? This also relates to something that comes out after after January 6th. But there was a lot more to all of this. Because after I've itemized the stuff we did know already on January 6th, next comes the stuff that comes after it. Now, item number 7. Pennsylvania extended deadline for mail-in ballots illegally. Now, this happened, and I think you could even find some evidence that this happened. The legislature had it, the election ends on November 8, whatever it was, at 8 p.m. November, whatever the number was, at 8 p.m. That's the end. If you haven't got it in, too bad. They were willing to allow that, okay, it could be postmarked on that day, even if it took a day or two to come through the mail. They were going to allow it for that. But what really ended up happening was they allowed stuff to come in 3 days afterwards, and either they did not check the postmark, or they found some place where they could postmark them to the previous date. But they came in afterwards. Several 100,000 ballots came in after the deadline, and they were allowed in. They weren't supposed to be. The legislature did not allow it. But some random judge just said, screw the legislature, we're going to let this happen. And it's illegal. Those ballots really have no right to be counted. And here was the other thing. Pennsylvania is an interesting story in its own right, because, you see, Trump was clearly ahead by several 100,000 votes. Real votes by flesh and blood, legally registered voters. And then we got how many hundreds of thousands of ballots coming in after the deadline. Now, some may have been legitimately mailed by Republicans, but most of them would be Democrats. I bet it was a very, very uneven mix. Very uneven. Very unrepresentative of the state of the whole. Plus, we don't know where those ballots came from. So, there's a lot going with that. That was number 7. All right, number 8. Incorrectly filled ballots from Democrat counties were cured. This again was in Pennsylvania, but not in the Republican counties. So, something's wrong, but hey, you can cure this. They get the voter. Is this what you really wanted? You forgot to sign here. You need to mark this. You need to do that. Now it's cured. Okay, now you got a good ballot. You can count this. But in Republican areas, if somebody didn't fill it out right and they threw it out because of that, no chance to cure, no nothing. And that was just based on whether the areas were Democrat or Republican. Very obvious bias. Okay. Number 9. State official in Georgia changed election rules on the fly illegally. Okay. Again, the legislature. American Constitution. You believe in the American Constitution? MAGA Republicans do. Constitution makes it quite explicit. The state legislatures decide and define how an election of any sort within a given state is to be conducted by that state, on behalf of that state, or whatever. That legislature They decide. That's it. Nobody else has a say in that. So, I suppose maybe a legislature could designate somebody else if they so chose. But without that designation on record, nobody else can do it. Not legally, not constitutionally. So, okay. But they were changing it. This isn't okay. Votes cast by person number 10. I'm going to stop with this one here. Not because I'm low on time, but because I kind of got some other commentary. Votes cast by persons leaving the state in various different 17,877 votes were cast in Georgia by persons who had left Georgia and presumably voted elsewhere. 7,246 in Pennsylvania, 6,254 in Wisconsin, 5,145 in Nevada, 5,084 in Arizona, 1,688 in Michigan. Now, so we have, just over a third of my items that were identified. Now, what happened to these? They disappeared. It's gone. Poof. You put, people who put stuff out on there. Poof. It's just gone. It's swept under the rug. So that then, Trump saw all this information. So when he says there was a lot of fraud going on, he's not making it up. He saw this stuff. He knew it was going on. He's stating the facts that he saw. Now, these things require investigation. Did they ever get investigation? No, they did not. Did they ever really get refuted? I mean, did somebody show some way or demonstrate somehow this, didn't happen, or this couldn't have happened, or this was an honest mistake, or this was something that it happened, but we cleaned up properly, here, doesn't so, or some kind of response? No, that does not exist. It doesn't exist. And the same will go for the rest of these. They just disappeared. And only on what rare occasions they couldn't sweep it under the rug, like the several-day extension in Pennsylvania is probably the one thing you might hear about. Or maybe the big how poll watchers were kept away from seeing stuff. You might find that, maybe. I doubt it. Even those kinds of details that you might hear of. Or you might be one of the few people who comes across one or another of these things. It all gets swept under the rug. And if you did have to deal with it, it just got poo-poo. Oh, poo-poo. That's it. That's the whole thing. Poo-poo. Really? Really? People saw very serious stuff going on. Individually, any of the strategies mentioned isn't very much. I mean, most cheats might only be a tiny percentage. Might only affect the outcome of an election that's within a couple thousand votes or less, statewide, let's say. But, if you're not using just one method, you're using a whole host of different methods. This one gives you 4,000 votes. This one gives you 10,000 votes. This one gives you 800 votes. This one gives you, 1,400 votes, and so on. And it cumulatively adds up to the point where you can throw it off by some tens of thousands of votes or more. You could throw it off by just cumulatively using either all or most of these various methods that exist. It varies a little from state to state because different states function different ways, have different legislatures with different rules and laws and a different framework and so forth. So some methods might not have been advantageous, but other states would have different things that they could use or that could be used to throw their elections. So it all just disappeared. And once it was gone, all we got left is Trump saying there was all this fraud, and where's all the support for it? Well, there was plenty, but it's all gone now. I mean, it's gone. Poof. I had to do some digging over notes and things that I was gathering throughout that period. At least I had that. So I had some notes on all of this. And these are what I've gathered. These are the beginning. I got a bunch more, but I'll continue those later. So this is what they were doing. They made it go away. Now, let's summarize something very important here. Can they make somebody win that people really, really major league don't want, or make somebody lose that everybody really major league wants? Depends on how much. I think of, for example, the Wisconsin competition between Liz Cheney and Kerrigan, Curry. Anyway, the other one who won the representative seat. Now there the vote was so huge. It is properly what you call a landslide. Better than 2/3 of the state voted Hagerty. That was voted for Hagerty. You say less than a third for Liz Cheney. Well, I'm surprised even a third would have voted for her, but I guess there's always clueless people who like to, aren't voting seriously, but like to use the ballot as a place to tell a joke or something. But whatever. So there's no way they could have added up all the methods they had and made Liz Cheney the winner of Wisconsin in 2022. It just couldn't be done. So this is something real important. We can win, but we're going to have to win by more than just a tiny percentage, because they will make that tiny percentage go away and disappear. That's what they will do. But if it's big enough, if it's huge enough, then there's no concealing it anymore. There's no more concealing it. It's like everyone can see this is something where somebody has done something. And then, unlike the last time, now we've done some things, some laws in some states to try to kind of hone that down, have more signature verification, voter ID, you come in to vote, show them your ID, maybe a little tighter control over how ballots are sent out to people for those who, really should be those who legitimately ask for them. Somewhat tighter controls here and there. Maybe these things will help. Say nothing of the fact that also, Republicans are now having to start doing some of the same stuff that Democrats have been doing for years to cheat, and that is ballot harvesting. Curiously enough, that's now actually legal in some states, including California, for example. So now Republicans are going to start doing a whole lot more of that, and that's, well, they'll have to invent something else. What remains to be seen is what that will be and how effective that will be. But whatever it is, we need to win by more than just a percentage point or two. We need to win by at least a good solid 10% nationwide. If we can do that, then they won't be able to conceal a Trump win. They're going to find some way to hide it, but they can't hide something that huge. They're going to find some way to try to sabotage it. I don't know what, but I don't know. Anyway, we'll continue with some more of these methods next installment. Thanks for listening.